You know, funny enough, the way many Chargers fans probably feel about this team right now is right in line with what you would think or feel about any team with a 2-2 record. Just kind of meh, I guess. But this week 5 bye is more than just a much needed opportunity for guys that are banged up to, lick their wounds and recover. There's just enough of a sample size to assess and make adjustments where needed. So we're going to chop it up a little bit about that. Of course, talk about this Chiefs game, which I wish I didn't have to, and a path forward. So y'all know what it is. Y'all know who I be, Mr. TOP_FLYT3, and welcome to another edition of IG50I. That's right. I got 5 on it. So let's get into it. How about we get things kicked off with a little good, bad, and ugly, right? The good. Matt McConkey and Justin Herbert appear to be establishing a bit of an on-field rapport. I think it's kind of safe to say at this point. Made itself really evident here just this past week against the Chiefs. That back of the end zone rope 10 zip to McConkey is even more impressive when you realize that Ladd took an outside jab step to gain a bit of separation before breaking inside for the catch, and Herbert both threw him open and timed it with the fake step McConkey put on. Now, it could have just been a part of the route, but it looked improvised. Impressive nonetheless. Also good. That first offensive drive. We're talking about a 6.5 minute, 10 play, 74-yard march that basically ended in the formation TD pass from Herbert to McConkey. A fantastic blend of misdirection plays, quick hitters in the passing game, and of course, the downhill smash mouth run game. You saw a conscious effort to keep Herbert clean and not a single penalty. Imagine that. It is not a consistent theme throughout the game, but we're going to talk about that. Of course, there's the defense. You held a Patrick Mahomes-led offense to 10 points until the fourth quarter. You collected 3 sacks. They forced 2 turnovers. The game plan to fence Mahomes into the pocket and collapse it around him proved to be super effective all game long. I specifically love Jesse Minter's usage of edge defenders, interior defensive linemen, and linebackers to disguise the rush pass and basically fooled Mahomes into thinking he had clear escape paths, only to find a defender looping to cut him off. So salute to Poona Ford, Khalil Mack, Bud Dupree, and especially Tuli Tuipulotu, whose numbers won't stand out in the box score, but he was consistently hell for Mahomes on Sunday. Now, that was the good, so you know what's next, right? Ah, yes, the bad. And boy, was there plenty of it. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this one because it's as frustrating to discuss as I'm sure it is to listen to all over again. So we'll just have to touch on it, hit it and quit it, move along. 9 penalties. 9. Talking about 7 on the offense, and of those 7, 6 were attributed to offensive linemen. And it would have been 7 had a face mask penalty against Trey Pipkins not been declined. In a week where field position and staying ahead of the sticks was paramount due to all of the attrition on the offensive line and your QB out there on one leg getting his full pimp strut on, how can you possibly expect to produce any consistent offensive output on the back of that ineptitude? I said I wasn't going to stay here long, and I'm not, because I'm getting annoyed again just thinking about it. It's a Jim Harbaugh-led team. I get there was a lot of mixing and matching on the offensive line, but dog. We got to be better. There's really no excuse for all of that. And as far as the ugly goes, take your pick. But let's start here. Jimbo, the Justin Watkins challenge in the third. Why, Jim? I have to imagine that someone is charged with advising you on whether or not it made sense to challenge that play. That then later comes back to bite you on the Josh Palmer play that should have been challenged because it was questionable as to whether he had been touched prior to him rolling or whatever that was he was doing on the ground. It was kind of crazy looking for what looked like it could have been a first down. Also, Josh Palmer. Why? Why, champ? Why are you catching that pass and immediately crumbling to the turf as if it were like a possession catch on Madden where you were looking to get the first down and extend the drive? He turns upfield after catching that, and he probably walks into the end zone virtually untouched. But anywho, that entire sequence in the red zone that ended in a turnover on downs, trash. We're talking about a team that wants to be the bully on the block. They line up in shotgun with maybe one wide receiver that can gain consistent separation and no bigger body receiving options, plus a QB with one functional foot/ankle. And therefore, he isn't a threat to run at all. And the Chiefs knew that. And you attempt to pass anyway. And for good measure, the spacing in the passing game is still horrendous. Makes absolutely no sense to me at this point, but I digress. There's way more to get into. And next up, we got to talk to some members of this organization. Let's look at this as family dinner, right? Hey, Darius, Greg, come with your boy to the kitchen. I need some help with the dishes. DD, check this out, man. What's good with you this year, my G? Like, your role on this team is much more important this year than it was during your rookie campaign, just by virtue of the team's more conservative play style. You're consistently making poor decisions in the return game every week, and it's costing the team dearly. They need decent field position. You can't ask them to consistently drive the ball 70 plus yards, especially when you're dealing with as many injuries as they are. Shape up, champ. Mr. Roman, or Greg. Can I call you Greg? Check this out, homie. Listen, I get that the O-line was a mess and almost single-handedly buried the offensive game plan, but brother, you allowed yourself to get chiefed. You can't be in scoring position with an opportunity to put pressure on that team by pulling ahead in the fourth and instead walk away with nothing. And it's basically because you got in your own head. How did you watch the Falcons game just a week prior and essentially make the same mistake? Mind-blowing. How did you not do the one thing you're known for in that situation? Woosah. Now, I don't fancy myself a complainer, and I really don't like it when people just talk about crap that they don't like and don't at least have some semblance of a solution. So since we like to be solutions oriented around here, I figure there are a couple names out there that I think the team should be interested in. Now, it all depends on what the goals are for this season, and that may affect who they go after. Some short-term options make sense, but if you're talking more long-term into the future, it tells you a little bit about what they consider this year to be. So I don't think the Chargers are technically in win now mode, which may make some of these suggestions moot, but we'll see. Amari Cooper with the Browns kind of speaks for itself. The Chargers, I feel like, maybe do need a number one wide receiving option. This is the same guy who stood on the table for Malik Neighbors, so this is nothing new. When you look at the pros and cons of having a number one versus not, well, when you do, teams have a specific guy that they can key in on. And if they can shut that person down, it may affect your offense if you're not good at game planning. But flip side to that is if you have a number one guy, everyone else who contributes gets more opportunities because the teams are keying on said guy. So not only does this person have a chance to make it happen on his own because he's good in one-on-one situations or is just more skilled, he provides other avenues for other people to succeed. So yeah, I think they need a number one option, whether it be at wide receiver or tight end. DeAndre Hopkins with the Titans, older, short term. And I mean, Cooper has some injury issues. He's getting up there in age, but still a little less tread on the tires than DeAndre Hopkins. At least it appears that way. But Hop is still a beast. And he's going to be a really good possession receiver. Even though he doesn't get a ton of separation, he can still win with physicality. And you know he's going to be a monster at the catch point. Then if we're talking tight ends, there's Dawson Knox, who's hanging out with the Bills. And dude can do a little bit of everything. He's definitely a vertical field stretcher as a tight end, so he can work the seams. Not a bad blocker. And he's falling behind because there's another name out there from a school that I won't mention because I can't stand them. That's getting more looks. So maybe potentially there's an opportunity to make a move there. Then the name that is getting floated around a ton, T. Higgins. That one, maybe. We don't exactly know what the expectations are going to be. You know, you're going to have to pay him for sure. And do you want T. Higgins as your number one option? Do you feel like he can be a number one option? He would definitely be the best receiver of what you have now. So maybe a collection of, you know, an above average T. Higgins, an ascending Lad McConkey, an improving QJ sounds good. I can work with that. But again, contractually and some other stuff out there may make that maybe not all that realistic, but who knows. And then if you're looking for like more of a tier B solution, but gives you more vertical opportunities, Darius Slayton from the Giants is a name that's popped up here in years past in trade discussions, or at least amongst fans. And he helps quell some of that lack of verticality the team is suffering from not having. But post bye, you should be getting your vertical threat back. So, I mean, you can never have enough speed, but at the end of the day, I don't know. I think it makes sense to establish yourself as a team that has multiple threats that can beat you, or at least be decoys down the field. And there's nothing wrong with adding another one. And Darius Slayton probably won't cost you a ton either. So just depends. But these are just shots in the dark here. When we're talking offensive linemen, the truth of the matter is good old linemen don't just get traded. So unless some team is stashing a youngin, waiting in the wings and ready to roll, and they have a vet that's or they're itching to put on the trading block, the Chargers may have to look internally for an answer. And in that vein, cue up Jordan McFadden. Garrett actually mentioned him during after hours, and I'm wondering the same thing. Like, what happened to this do-it-all interior lineman who was not only athletic and talented enough to possibly be a future center, but all camp long he was being fitted for the Mick fullback spot? That was cute, but fruitless to this point. Sidebar. You know what else is cute? Narratives and agendas. Some are actually quite fun and entertaining. They also tend to lean almost completely fictional and black or avoid any and all context. A little more Greg Roman talk here for you for just a sec, so bear with me. Most of the fan base let out a collective groan when they found out Greg Roman was going to be Jim Harbaugh's offensive coordinator. I mean, I was personally rooting for David Shaw, who interviewed during the head coaching search cycle, but alas, 'twas not meant to be. That said, Roman was and is going to be under a microscope and on the shortest of leashes with both fans. But let's be reasonable. I mean, it's been 4 games, 2.5 of which have been played with a combination of an injured quarterback and a makeshift offensive line, and some could care less. I mean, not that the man is above reproach. I clearly just chastised him minutes ago, and there is much room for improvement. I mean, it's clear, specifically in the passing game. And I fully expected Marcus Brady and Mark Trestman to have a heavier influence there, so I'm not sure what's going on right now. But really and truly, how much can you expect from an offense that wants to run the ball first, who also has to circumvent an already below average interior offensive line, and now also its strength, both offensive tackles being out? I mean, you need not only an airtight game plan, but also near flawless execution from replacement players and guys that are playing out of position. I mean, expecting high level execution, being able to overcome all of that for the majority of a game is wildly unrealistic. And can we stop conflating things? Like, really? It's kind of sad. Like, in an attempt to create non-existent gotcha moments. For example, I love dominant run first offense and a complementary passing game, namely a vertical one. That does not somehow translate into me loving Greg Roman. Like, for instance, I'm a big fan of Spider-Man. Does that also somehow make me an Andrew Garfield stan? Nah. Facts over feelings. Please. Anyway, it's enough of me ranting. This has been kind of a back and forth first few weeks. Going into the bye, there's a lot to assess, and I fully expect the team to make some adjustments. Now, they may not make a lot of the moves that some want. They may feel like there's an opportunity to improve from within. Maybe they can make some changes on the interior offensive line that pay dividends. Who knows at this point? I do know that, you've got some players coming back. And maybe they think that's enough to help improve things. I sure hope not. That feels like such a Charger thing. It's like, hey, we don't have our full complement of guys, but when we do, we're going to get them. But I trust Joe Ortiz. He's always about churning the roster. He wants to get the best version of it possible. And I'm sure Jim Harbaugh has his input. So we'll see how it goes. But we have a week to all stew in it. But let's not crash out. The team's 2-2. All hope is not lost. You shouldn't feel that way. But if you do, at least be respectful to the people you're talking to. Because not everybody is about this online internet nonsense. And in real life, they're wholly different than what you see in front of a camera or on a podcast. Yeah, I'm making reference to myself. But never mind. I appreciate y'all. Catch you next time. Until then, go on.